When I first heard about Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, it brought back fond memories of when I first laid my hands on Dark Souls. The original game kicked my butt, over and over again. It beat me into submission and threw me over the edge as I raged, broke controllers, and maybe even a window or two. But that was 7 years ago. 2012 was a different time for gaming. For me, I eventually quit the game. Naturally, I went right back a few months later, and in 2013, I learned that the game is not hard, it is just challenging. It is not something worth breaking controllers over, as long as you are willing to forego everything third-person action-adventure games have taught you in the past. The result? I became so good at the first game that I could speedrun and one-shot most bosses that I came across. Then Dark Souls 2 came out. After that, Dark Souls 3. Eventually I played Bloodborne. Wash, rinse, repeat. No matter how much they beat me, made me rage and scream into the void, I always went back to them, beat them, over and over again. I showed them how it is done, and I loved every single moment of it. The good news is that the very same repetitive, yet highly rewarding process is also present in Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. We received a code for review from Software on the day the game released, and I knew that the moment we received it, that my next challenge had arrived. Although Dark Souls might prepare you for all the deaths and fails by subtitling the game with "Prepare to Die," Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice features elements of resurrection. So I scoffed at it. I mocked it even. How can resurrection make things challenging? Well, I suppose I got the answer handed back to me in more ways than I can count. In this famous Sekiro Shadows Die Twice review, I will tell you how the game hit me over the head with a blunt object ad nauseum and how I loved every single second of it. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice takes inspiration from the late 1500 Sengoku era of classical Japan. This inspiration dictates the entire look and feel of the game, from characters, setting, and even the story, which focuses on the one-armed wolf. In this game, players take on the role of this wolf, a shinobi responsible for protecting Kuro, the last divine heir of the Hirata family of the Ashina clan. Kuro is also the last in a line of family blessed with the powers of immortality. When Wolf wakes up, he learns that a warlord named Genikiru has kidnapped Kuro, and it is now up to the shinobi to get the divine heir back. Naturally, this leads to a confrontation between Genikuru and Wolf, where Wolf gets his arm chopped off in spectacular fashion. This directly leads to where the game actually starts, and Wolf learns about his new prosthetic arm. This is also around the time that Wolf learns of his resurrection power, beseeched into him by the divine heir himself. In stark contrast to the vague and ambiguous narrative style implemented by the studio in its previous games, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is focused specifically on Wolf's vengeful journey as he makes his way back through Ashina and into the Ashina castle. He must get his master back at any cost after all. Given that this is the most narrative From Software has developed in decades, it would make sense that your second encounter with Genkiro would be the final match of the game. It is not. No. In fact, this is only where the game opens up. From here on out, it is Wolf's mission to figure out the past. 3 years of missing memories, which have been suppressed for some reason, all of which must now be unveiled. Naturally, because this is a From Software game, players get hints about this as soon as the game allows you to control the shinobi for the first time. It expertly lays down hints that you will only come to appreciate once you have passed a certain key point in the story. This is where From Software's penchant to hide lore and story beats comes into play. Putting the addition of an actual narrative aside, it must be mentioned that this remains a From Software game at heart. As such, this means that the Soulsborne nature of the game will have players die time and time again. I know I did many times. In order to combat this, however, the game offers a multitude of ways to get by and defeat foes, find secrets, and even traverse the world. Much like Demon Souls, Dark Souls 2 and 3, and Bloodborne, Sekiro features a hub area, also known as the Dilapidated Temple, where the player can return to at any time to rest, recuperate, upgrade equipment, and learn new skills. Players will find that there are sculptors' idols strewn across the land that will always set them on the correct path. As long as players have communed with the sculptor's idol in a new area, they will always be able to return there. This means that players can use these idols to travel between places at will. For most of the game, the sculptor will preside inside the temple, where players can upgrade their Shinobi prosthetic with new tools. Apart from the default use of the prosthetic, which is to grapple onto ledges, these tools range wildly in type and function. Early on, you will find the shuriken tool, but as you progress, you will start to find secret tools hidden throughout Ashina. You will even find that some merchants carry tools and even get them as drops from certain bosses. An optional tool you can get early on, for instance, comes by way of Roberts' firecrackers, which the sculptor will fit onto the prosthetic as the firecracker tool. This can be used to scare beast-type enemies and blind human enemies for a short while. It is particularly helpful against the Blazing Bull or any samurai general enemies found throughout Ashina. Other secret tools include the flame vent and loaded spear, amongst many others. The addition of these shinobi tools opens the world to countless possibilities of traversal and enemy slaying. However, as you progress through the story, you will start to notice that some bosses are nigh impossible to defeat without the correct tool. Besides the default tools for the prosthetic, From Software also added a brand new means of progression to the game in the form of skills and prosthetic upgrades. As you kill enemies, you gain experience. Eventually, enough experience will result in a skill point. Skill points then can be used on esoteric texts that you unlock or find as you progress throughout the game. By opening the skills menu, you will find that there are 3 major skill types that you can unlock. Combat arts are skills that you need to equip to perform. Latent skills and shinobi arts, on the other hand, are passive skills that you will activate in certain conditions. Latent skills include skills such as the Mikiri counter, which allows you to counter dangerous thrust attacks by stomping onto enemy weapons. Shinobi arts, however, are additional combos that add to your arsenal. These include extra slashes at the end of combos, kicks and grabs, and even extra little flourishes that will up the ante for the foes you face. Other forms of progression include prayer beads and memories. You will receive a prayer bead for every mini-boss that you complete. Once you have 4, you can take it to any sculptor's idol in order to increase your vitality and posture. Similarly, every boss you defeat will reward you with a memory of battle. Once presented to an idol, Wolf will gain an extra attack point. There are other ways to gather prayer beads throughout the game. These can often be found in secret locations or bought from rare merchants later in the game for a heck of a lot of money. In contrast to other From Software titles, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice features a proper progression system. Where previous titles relied on new weapons and gear sets to get you by, Sekiro changes it up by allowing players to choose how and when the obtained shinobi tools should be upgraded. This gives the game a role-playing-like element, one that directly influences how players interact with the shinobi combat arts, latent skills, and techniques that are unlocked as players progress through the game. As such, players can craft their very own version of Wolf to take on a world of seemingly endless combat opportunities. These opportunities seem limited at first. Then the narrative leads you through to Ashina Castle, and suddenly 2 other paths open up. Whichever path you choose will open up to even more paths, and so on and so forth. It truly is an incredible experience, especially when considering how every locale is linked together as part of a single cohesive world. One where you can look back and see areas that you have explored in the past. A gorgeous world with seemingly endless possibilities. The world of Sekiro is an enormous, beautiful landscape filled with mountains, forests, and fields. It provides countless areas to explore and tons of incredible vistas to look at. In proper From Software fashion, the world is also linked. Have you played for hours and crossed into a new mountain area? Well, you'll find a vista and you'll look around. You may just spot an area or two that you visited long ago. Have you traversed through what felt like hell and came out on the other end in a snowy region? Well, pull out the monocle and scout a bit, and you may just find hints of broken bridges that you couldn't traverse earlier in the game. Everything is connected, and it is truly amazing. The beauty of it all, however, becomes even more spectacular when you realize that the game does not drop a single frame in any of these locations. It runs like a dream. With that said, I do think that loading could be a little bit better. Fortunately, once in the game, as long as you can stay alive of course, the loading is kept to a minimum. From Software made a huge gamble when they announced that Dark Souls 3 would be the last Souls title. Fortunately, it paid off in a wonderful way. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice not only boasts an incredible narrative, one which is unlike anything the studio has done before, but it delivers said narrative in an impactful way through gameplay, whereby every little thing you do has been injected with lore and meaning. It is supremely satisfying. From the endless dying to the satisfaction you get out of finally obtaining victory, from the beautiful areas and incredibly well-researched architecture, From Software have crafted a true masterpiece with Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. It has an actual story with real character progression, beyond just upping stats every few pit stops, and a super rewarding gameplay. It has everything, and in our opinion, it is near perfection.